Hey everyone, Christian here, and excuse me for the breeze. I'm going to talk as close as I can to the phone, but it's a little breezy today, as you can tell. But I want to do a vlog here on discussing what a true date palm would look like without any trimming, without just planted as it would be from seed and left alone. And here I have a specimen that I've seen for 15 years now in Venice, and you can see here there's a main trunk. And then there's all these trunks down below. Now this is left completely, pretty much untrimmed unless the leaves fall actually on the ground. It does not get trimmed, but as you see, there's a whole level of dead leaves that just haven't been tended to. I'm not entirely sure this is it looks the part of a true date, but it clumps so much that I think it might have some hybridization with like Sylvestris, but we'll just go with the fact that it's a pure species because it shows a lot of characteristics of being a pure species. So when you get date palms, Phoenix dactylifera, say at a nursery or just you get one from seed, you may plant it, and after a while, after maybe a 7 or 15 gallon size, you may notice that it'll actually set off some suckers, some offshoots that look just like that right there. They tend to be more silvery, have a little more color to them, and the truth is that true dates, Phoenix dactylifera does clump. However, it tends not to clump this much. So that's why I'm wondering if this is either a really old specimen with really large suckers, or it's just it might be a hybrid itself. But a lot of people don't know that true dates or medules, whatever you want to call them, actually clump quite a bit. If you see them in habitat in, say, the Middle East, North Africa, the Mediterranean, they'll often be left to themselves and they will clump like this. So they look quite interesting, and I think if trimmed up, this would be a great specimen for a front yard. However, you can see here that the thorns are quite brutal. I'm not going to get anywhere near this because if the leaves start blowing one way too hard, they could just stab me right in the neck, and I don't want that. So, the top head. Another thing that leads me to believe this might be a hybrid is that you can see the pinnae are actually quite pendant for a true date. They're not very rigid, or as rigid as a true date should be. And some of them look pretty decent, but they are bipinnate. You can see the leaves are the fronds or leaflets, I should say, are growing in two planes, and that's typical for some Phoenix. For dactylifera, they do tend to do that, but you can see it almost looks plumose in some of these. You can see how the pinnae are actually growing in like 45 degrees from one another. Usually it's pretty close. The angle is very close to one another, and so that's atypical. So that could lead me to believe that this is a hybrid. So a lively dog. Anything can happen here in Florida. So there's some interesting clumps. And the color is actually quite nice too on the leaflets that are doing really well. This is suffering from some sort of potassium, magnesium deficiency, but that's to be expected in our relatively poor soils that just don't have those nutrients, and it's left to itself. So there's no irrigation here. This has just been hanging out on the side. There's probably another one here. I can't remember if there was, but there's an empty spot. It looks like there was something growing there, and I believe that palm died. So around this complex, which has been around since I've lived here, so probably been here for 20-25 years, there are a bunch of these dates planted, and so I try and use some of that information to determine, hey, where do these plants come from, how old are they, and how fast do they grow. Now, this was probably, when I first got here, about half its size with a few smaller suckers. They weren't as small as, say, that one there, but they definitely didn't have a trunk like that one right there. So it's interesting to kind of watch this grow and see how nice it becomes. I think if this were trimmed up, if all the dead leaves were trimmed up, you can see there's even the pinnae are gone off those just from the wind, just kind of dried up and just blown away. So kind of like everything that's going on here in this video. So also, you can see the color of the leaflets here. I'm sorry, of the petioles. They are quite yellow, which is a little bit atypical of a dactylifera, with an orange rachis. Again, something you might see more in a few other species like Sylvestris. So I think that there might be some element of hybridization going on there, but it has so many elements of dactylifera that, for all intents and purposes, I would like to call it that. I'm gonna guess that the seed, if it were a female, the seed's gonna be pretty close to a dactylifera size, which is a much larger seed. And man, it is windy out today. You think there's a hurricane coming. So with all that said, it's hard to tell. It's hard to say exactly. A lot could be told by, if it were to flower. I don't see any flower bracts on here, so that's going to be out of the question. But if you look, I'm going to step back for a second so you can get the full size of this palm. I think that's part of really what attracted me to it. You can see it's quite a massive plant. It looks kind of like almost looks like if I were to guess, like a cross between like a mule and a Phoenix dactylifera, with its droopy leaflets, its clumpiness, and its overall size. And it's interesting to kind of watch, like I said, to watch this grow. You can see the older this is pretty typical, where the older leaflets will actually start to yellow due to the lack of nutrients and bring them to the newer leaflets. So you can see the top of the crown actually is pretty nice looking. The mid and lower levels progressively worse. So it almost looks variegated by the lower mid levels there. And that's happening on the suckers as well. So if anything seems to happen with this, if they decide to trim it up, or unfortunately, hopefully they never cut it down, because I think it's actually a pretty cool specimen palm, and it's interesting. It's kind of a landmark. You can say, hey, meet me by that date palm that has a bunch of clumps, that has all these weird colors going on. So anyway, it's kind of, when palms stand out, whether they're rare or common, their structure, their size, and their uniqueness, I guess you could say, really can make a palm stand out. It doesn't have to be rare. This is a pretty common palm. There's about 5 in the front. Just this one happens to sport special characteristics that caught my eye. So I always like finding different palms, even of common species. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let the vlog go there. If you guys have any questions about Phoenix and its hybridization, go ahead and leave it down below. If you enjoyed the vlog and would like to see more, go ahead and like and subscribe, and go ahead and hit that bell notification as well. I do live stream quite a bit. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see everyone next time.